The land beyond the east bank of the Nistru river, Transnistria, or Pridnestrovie in Russian, bears its name from early 20th century when its multi-ethnic people, comprised of mainly Romanians and Ukrainians, strongly started to question Transnistria's territorial identity, whilst key countries in the region, Romania and the newly founded Soviet Union, recognized its strategic importance. Although declaring independence in 1990, no United Nations member recognizes Transnistria's sovereignty, and the region is considered by the UN to be an integral part of Moldova. As of 2021, only Abkhazia, the Republic of Artsakh, and South Ossetia recognize its independence, all themselves states with limited recognition and appearing under similar circumstances as Transnistria. Brawls and border skirmishes between Transnistrian separatists and Moldovan authorities soon escalated into a full-on war in 1992 against the newly independent state of Moldova and the self-proclaimed Republic of Transnistria, the latter openly backed by Russia's 14th Army stationed in Tiraspol. A war whose outcome causes instability in the region to this day, costing the lives of hundreds on both sides and ruining the livelihood of thousands of families. Both sides continue to be caught in a constant diplomatic tug-of-war with no viable resolution in sight. So how did it come to this? One must look back further than the dissolution of the Soviet Union, more specifically when Russia moved its borders to the Nistru River in late 18th century. A constant expanding Russian Empire reached the border of the Principality of Moldavia, vassal of the Ottoman Empire, in early 18th century overlooking the Nistru River. Russian military presence in lands beyond the Nistru was not uncommon in various wars fought against the Ottomans. Peter the Great reached Iași in 1711 to aid his ally and friend Dimitrie Cantemir, voivod of Moldavia, fight the Turks. Other notable presences during wartime were in 1739, when the Russians briefly kept hold of Hotin Castle, and during the Russo-Turkish War of 1769 and 1774, where the Russians occupied both capitals of Wallachia and Principality of Moldavia, Bucharest and Iași. 1792 marked the year when Russia's famed Field Marshal and Generalissimo Alexander Vasilievich Suvorov stretched the border of the Russian Empire to the Nistru River, in which the entire province of modern-day Transnistria came under Russian administration, over waging wars with the Ottomans for centuries. It is also the year in which Tiraspol was founded, today's capital of Transnistria, overlooking the strategic Ottoman fortress of Tighina, or Bender as it's known in Russian, formerly owned by the Principality of Moldavia. In 1812, the border was moved again, this time to another river, Prut, incorporating the eastern territories of the Principality of Moldavia, today's Republic of Moldova, which the Russians called Bessarabia after hastily signing the Treaty of Bucharest in fear of an upcoming war between the Russians and the Napoleonic forces. Annexing Bessarabia retained its right to interfere in both principalities' affairs, Moldavia and Wallachia. Russia invaded the principalities during the Russo-Turkish War of 1828, which resulted in the 1829 Treaty of Adrianople. The treaty provided Russian occupation of the principalities until the Ottomans had fully paid an indemnity, the election of native Romanian princes for life, and an independent national administration and freedom of worship and commerce under Russian protection. Russia's actions caused a wave of anti-Russian sentiment throughout the principalities, each group having a different reason. The urban elite, the later liberals, were frustrated by Russia's opposition to reform in Romania, while landowning boyars, the later conservatives, were frustrated by Russia's impediments on the economy. All of this culminating into the 1848 Wallachian and Moldavian revolutions, marking the beginning of Romanian national identity and unity. Russia's defeat in the Crimean War meant the loss of Russian dominance in the region and led to Alexandru Ioan Cuza's unification of the Wallachian and Moldavian principalities in 1859, later becoming the Kingdom of Romania in 1866 with Carol I as reigning monarch and gaining its independence in 1881, thus officially ending the existence of the Principality of Moldavia. The end of the First World War caught Romania on the winning side, Whilst the Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, was generous and advantageous to Romania, almost doubling its size, it also left many Romanians out of their ethnic and historical border, Transnistria being such a case. With the Russian Empire collapsing and opportunity of territorial reunification with Romania on the horizon, in late December 1917, a Congress of Moldavians beyond the Nistru was held with delegates present from Bessarabia's Sfatul Țării, the country council, all in favor of unifying with Bessarabia and thus being a part of Romania. Their request wasn't granted by the Treaty of Versailles, and Transnistria remained in Russian territory, now under Soviet government. On the 12th of October 1924, the Moldavian Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic was created as part of Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, with Balta as the capital, later moving it to Tiraspol in 1928. But the official capital was proclaimed the temporarily occupied city of Chișinău. It is the first state entity of Transnistria. The western frontier of the Moldavian ASSR was fixed near the Prut River in the heart of historical Moldavia, then allegedly occupied by the Romanian imperialists, agreed upon by the Pan-Moldovian Congress held on April 1925. It was an artificial political creation inspired by the Bolshevik nationalities policy in the context of the loss of larger Bessarabia to Romania in April 1918. In such a manner, the Bolshevik leadership tried to radicalize pro-Soviet feelings in Bessarabia with a goal to return it in the presence of favorable conditions. The new republic aimed to spread communist ideas into neighboring Bessarabia with a chance that even Romania and the entire Balkan region would be revolutionized. For the Soviets, the republic was to be a way for winning over Bessarabians of Romania and the first step towards a revolution in Romania. This purpose is explained in an article of the newspaper Odessa Izvestia in 1924, in which a Russian politician, Vadeev, says that all the oppressed Moldavians from Bessarabia look at the future republic like at a lighthouse, which spreads the light of freedom and human dignity. According to Soviet statistics, the newly founded republic had an ethnic component of 46% Ukrainians, 32% Moldavians, and 10% Russians, stretching on a territory consisting of 8,100 square kilometers. In 1932 and 1933, a great famine, known as Holodomor, occurred in Ukraine, with millions dying of starvation as a consequence. During the famine, thousands of Transnistrians tried to escape over the Nistru, despite the threat of being shot. The border was reinforced with more armed division and elements of the secret police in order to counter the exodus. The most notable such incident happened near the village of Olonești on February 23, 1932, when 40 people, among them women and children, were shot by Soviet border guards and the secret police. This was reported in European newspapers by survivors. The Soviet side reported this as an escape of kulak elements subverted by Romanian propaganda, kulak being a term describing a wealthy peasant who owned over 8 acres. Then came the Soviet Great Purge of 1937, when many intellectuals in the Moldavian ASSR were accused of being enemies of the people, bourgeois nationalists or Trotskyists, and were removed from their positions and repressed, with a large number of them executed. Stalinist atrocities reached the rural areas as well. In Butor village from Grigoriopol district, 167 of the 168 men were executed, the 168th being the informer. Nonetheless, a great number of Transnistrians managed to flee into Romania, settling in Chișinău, Iași, and Cluj. In the wake of the Second World War, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was signed on the 23rd of August 1939 between National Socialist Germany and the Soviet Union, defining the division of the spheres of influence in Eastern Europe. Article 3 of the Secret Additional Protocol states, with regard to Southeastern Europe, attention is called by the Soviet side to its interest in Bessarabia. The German side declares its complete lack of political interest in these areas. On the 26th of June 1940, the Soviet government issued an ultimatum to the Romanian minister in Moscow, demanding Romania immediately cede Bessarabia and northern Bukovina. Italy and Germany, which needed a stable Romania and access to its oil fields, urged King Carol II to do so. On 28th of June, Soviet troops crossed the Nistru and occupied Bessarabia, Northern Bukovina, Bujak, and the Artsakh region, the latter which was not stated in an ultimatum. A national day of mourning was issued in Romania.
Oprește respirația întregii țări în clipa supremă când Basarabia este definitiv sfâșiată din trupul țării.
Thus, the Soviet Union gained back its pre-war territories with two additional ones that have never been under Russian administration, Northern Bukovina and Artsakh region, the easternmost crown land of the Austrian Empire from 1775 to 1918, and previously held by the Principality of Moldavia. The Soviet Republic created following annexation did not follow Bessarabia's traditional border. The Moldovan Soviet Socialist Republic, Moldovan ASSR, established on the 2nd of August 1940, consisted of 6.5 counties of Bessarabia, joined with the westernmost part of the already existent MASSR. Various changes were made to its borders, which were finally settled by November 1940. Territories where ethnic Ukrainians formed a large portion of the population, parts of Northern Bukovina and Bujak, went to the Ukrainian Socialist Soviet Republic, while a small strip of Transnistria east of the Nistru, with a significant 49% of inhabitants Moldovan population, was joined to the MSSR. The transfer of Bessarabia's Black Sea and Danube frontage to Ukrainian Socialist Soviet Republic ensured its control by a stable Soviet Republic. This transfer, along with the division of Bessarabia, was also designed to discourage future Romanian claims and irredentism. Deportations of locals to the northern Urals, Siberia and Kazakhstan occurred regularly throughout the Stalinist period, and in 1940 to 1941, circa 90,000 inhabitants of the annexed territories were subject to political persecutions such as arrests, deportations, or executions. Operation Barbarossa. On the 22nd of June, the combined Axis forces, Germany, Italy, Hungary, Slovakia, and Romania, over 3 million, attacked the Soviet Union in the largest invasion force in the history of warfare. In the early stages of the invasion, Romania seized the lost territories of Bessarabia, Northern Bukovina, as well as those of the former MASSR, and established its administration there known as the Transnistria Governorate. For the first time in history, Romania took control over Transnistria. Despite the Romanian administration, the Kingdom of Romania did not formally incorporate Transnistria into its administrative framework. The Transnistria Governorate was Romanian-administered territory between the Nistru and the southern Bug, occupied from the 19th of August 1941 to the 29th of January 1944. Limited in the east by the Nistru River, separating it from Bessarabia, in the west by the southern Bug River, separating it from the German Reich Commissariat Ukraine, and in the south by the Black Sea. It comprised of 13 counties, including the Black Sea port of Odessa, which became the administrative capital of Transnistria during World War II. Whilst a breath of fresh air for Christians and ethnic Romanians, many other minorities suffered over the course of the war. Many Jews were deported to Transnistria from Bessarabia and Bukovina under Antonescu's regime. During the period 1941 to 1944, tens of thousands of Jews became victims of the Romanian occupation of Transnistria. Not being Romanian territory, Transnistria was used as a killing field for the extermination of Jews. Survivors say that in comparison with the Holocaust of National Socialist Germany, where deportations were carefully planned, the Romanian government did not prepare to house thousands of people in Transnistria, where the deportees stayed. The people were instead placed in a crude barracks without running water, electricity, or latrines. Those who could not walk were simply left to die. In total, around 150 ghettos and camps functioned in Transnistria. By March 1944, successful offensives of the Soviet army reached northern Moldavia and Transnistria. On 12th of April, Tiraspol was occupied, and 4 days later all Transnistria was again in Soviet hands. By the end of August 1944, the entire territory was under Soviet control, with Soviet army units entering Chisinau on the 24th of August 1944. With the Axis powers defeated, bringing World War II to an end, The Paris Peace Treaty was signed in February 1947, fixing the Romanian-Soviet border to the one established in June 1940. This confirmed the 1940 loss of Bessarabia and Northern Bukovina to the Soviet Union. The territory remained part of the Soviet Union after World War II as the Moldovan Soviet Socialist Republic, achieving MASSR's ambition from the mid-1920s. The industrial heartland was set in Transnistria and around large cities, while in the rest of the republic agriculture was developed. By the late Soviet period, the urban intelligentsia and government officials were dominated mostly by ethnic Moldovans, while Russian and Ukrainians made up most of the technical engineering specialists. Collectivization was implemented between 1949 and 1950, although earlier attempts were made since 1942. During this time, a large-scale famine occurred. Some sources give a minimum of 100,000 peasants who died of famine and related disease between December 1946 and August 1947. In the 1970s and 1980s, Moldavia received substantial investment from the budget of the USSR to develop industrial scientific facilities as well as housing. In 1971, the Soviet Council of Ministers adopted a decision about the measures for further development of Chisinau. That secured more than 1 billion rubles of investment from the USSR budget. Subsequent decisions directed significant wealth and brought highly qualified specialists from all over the USSR to develop the Soviet Republic. Such an allocation of USSR assets was partially influenced by the fact that Leonid Brezhnev, the effective ruler of the USSR from 1964 to 1982, was the first secretary of the Communist Party of Moldavia from 1950 to 1952. Although Brezhnev and other first secretaries were largely successful in suppressing Moldovan nationalism, Mikhail Gorbachev's administration facilitated the revival of the movement in the region. His policies of glasnost, increased openness and transparency in government institutions, and perestroika, reconstruction, referring to the restructuring of the Soviet political and economical system, created conditions in which national feelings could be openly expressed and in which the Soviet republics could consider reforms independently from the central government. The Moldavian SSR's drive towards independence from the USSR was marked by civil strife as conservative activists in the east, especially in Tiraspol, as well as Communist Party activists in Chisinau, worked to keep the Moldavian SSR within the Soviet Union. National sentiment escalated in the Moldavian SSR in 1988. In 1989, the Popular Front of Moldova was formed as an association of independent cultural and political groups and gained official recognition. The Popular Front organized a number of large demonstrations, which led to the designation of Moldovan as the official language of the MSSR on the 31st of August 1989 and the return to the Latin alphabet in the preamble of its Declaration of Independence. Opposition was growing to the increasingly exclusionary nationalist policies of the Popular Front, especially in Transnistria, where the Unity Inter-movement had been formed in 1988 by Slavic minorities, and in the south where the organization Gagauz People, formed in November 1989, came to represent the Gagauz, a Turkish-speaking minority. The first democratic elections to the Moldavian SSR's Supreme Soviet were held on the 25th of February 1990. Runoff elections were held in March. The Popular Front won a majority of the votes. After the elections, Mircea Snegur, a reformed communist, was elected chairman of the Supreme Soviet. In September, he became president of the Republic. The reformist government that took over in May 1990 made many changes that did not please the minorities, including changing the Republic's name in June from the Moldovan Soviet Socialist Republic to the Soviet Socialist Republic of Moldova and declaring it sovereign the following month. At the same time, Romanian tricolor with the Moldovan coat of arms was adopted as the state flag, and Deșteaptă-te Române, the Romanian anthem, became the anthem of the SSRM. During that period, a movement for unification of Romania and the Republic of Moldova became active in each country. In 1990, when it became clear that Moldova was eventually going to secede, a group of pro-Soviet activists in Gagauzia and Transnistria proclaimed independence backed by Moscow in order to remain within the USSR. The Gagauz Republic was eventually peacefully incorporated into Moldova as the autonomous territorial unit of Gagauzia, but relationship with Transnistria soured. Republic of Moldova sovereignty was declared on the 23rd of June 1990 on its territory. August 1990. The Moldovan SSR refuses to participate in the referendum for the retention of the Soviet Union, but in the Gagauz and Transnistrian regions, and with the help of Soviet 14th Guard Army, according to an agreement between Anatoly Lukyanov and Igor Smirnov, a referendum is organized. Thus, on the 2nd of September 1990, the Transnistrian Republic is proclaimed in Tiraspol at the Second Extraordinary Congress of Deputies and elected a temporary Supreme Council. Igor Smirnov is confirmed the chairman of the council. The council also adopted its own declaration on sovereignty and law on languages, and in Tiraspol, the Transnistrian Moldovan Soviet Socialist Republic followed suit. One of the first clashes between the Moldovan government and separatists occurred on the 2nd of November 1990 in Dubăsari. Local women stormed the court and prosecutor's office and stayed there for several hours. A police detachment was then dispatched to clear a roadblock placed by the city residents on the bridge over the Nistru that effectively cut the city off from the central government. After being prevented from clearing the roadblock, policemen opened fire, with 3 residents of Dubăsari being killed and 13 wounded, resulting in the first casualties of the conflict. In the aftermath of the failure of the Soviet coup attempt of 1991, on the 2nd of August 1991, the Moldovan parliament adopted the Declaration of Independence of the Republic of Moldova. The declaration referred to the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact as null and void and viewed Moldova's independence as an act of elimination of the political and legal consequences of the above, declaring that the establishment of the Moldavian SSR on the territories of Bessarabia, Northern Bukovina, Herzegovina region, and the Moldavian ASSR was made in absence of any real legal basis. Transnistria interpreted this as meaning that the 1940 merger of the two sides of the Nistru was dissolved. Moldova, however, did not agree, as large portions of the territory occupied in 1940 by the USSR remain in Ukraine, and almost immediately took steps to assert its sovereignty over the full territory of the now former MSSR. At that time, the Republic of Moldova did not have its own army, and the first attempts to create one took place in early 1992 in response to the escalating conflict. The newly independent Moldovan parliament asked the defunct government of the USSR to begin negotiations with the Moldovan government in order to put an end to the illegal occupation of the Republic of Moldova and withdraw Soviet troops from Moldovan territory. Brawls and skirmishes with the police and locals loyal to the Chisinau regime have become common in Transnistria. And up until late 1991, policemen from Tiraspol and Râbnița swore allegiance to Transnistria. A second Moldovan attempt to cross the Lunga Bridge in Dubăsari took place on the 13th of December 1991. As a result of the fighting, 27 Transnistrian troops were taken prisoner and 4 Moldovan policemen were killed without Moldova being able to cross the bridge. The 4 policemen were given a state funeral and viewed as martyrs for the Moldovan independence cause. On the 1st of March 1992, Igor Shipchenko, the Transnistrian militia chief of Dubăsari, was killed by a teenager, and Moldovan police were accused of the killing. The incident was a sufficient spark for the already very tense situation to blow up and cause the conflict to escalate. In response, the Cossacks who came from Rostov-on-Don to support Transnistria's side stormed the police precinct in Dubăsari during the night. Moldovan President Mircea Snegur, afraid of starting an armed conflict, ordered the 26 policemen to surrender to the attacking Cossacks and Transnistrian forces. They were later exchanged for Lieutenant General Yakovlev. Moldovan policemen loyal to Chisinau from the Dubăsari district, instead of returning to work in the occupied precinct in Dubăsari, gathered in Cocieri. On the 2nd of March 1992, locals from Cocieri, after hearing about the situation in Dubăsari, broke into the small locals' armed depot to arm themselves against the Transnistrian side. 3 locals were killed, but the military unit from Cocieri was defeated by the Moldovans. The officers and their families were forced to leave the village. More policemen were ferried the following days from the western bank of the Nistru. They organized a defense line around the 3 villages while the Transnistrian forces retained control of Dubăsari. The 2nd of March 1992 is considered the official start date of the war in Transnistria, the same day when Moldova was admitted as a member of the United Nations and receiving full international recognition of its August 27, 1991 Declaration of Independence. It is also the day that Moldovan President Mircea Snegur authorized concerted military action against Transnistrian forces which had been attacking police outposts loyal to the Moldovan government on the left bank of the river Nistru and on a smaller section of the right bank around the southern city of Tighina. Transnistrian forces, aided by contingents of Russian Cossacks and the Russian 14th Army, consolidated their control over most of the disputed area. In the eve of the war, total Moldovan troop strength had been estimated at 25,000 to 35,000, including called-up officers, conscripts, reservists, and volunteers, especially from the Moldovian localities near the conflict zone. At the same time, the Russian 14th Guard Army in Moldovan territory outnumbered about 14,000 professional soldiers. Transnistrian authorities had 9,000 militiamen trained and armed by officers of the 14th Army. Volunteers came from the Russian Federation. A number of Don, Kuban, Orenburg, Sibir, and local Transnistrian Black Sea Cossacks joined in to fight alongside the separatists. Due to irregular makeup of the forces, troop strength of Transnistria is in dispute, but it is believed that during March it numbered around 12,000. Forces of Russia's 14th Army stationed in Transnistria had fought with and on behalf of the Transnistrian forces. A significant portion of the personnel of the Russian 14th Army were local conscripts and officers had been given local residence. Transnistrian units were able to arm themselves with weapons taken from the stores of the former 14th Army. The Russian troops chose not to oppose the Transnistrian units, who had come to help themselves from the army stores. On the contrary, in many cases they helped the Transnistrian troops equip themselves by handing over weapons and by opening up the ammunition stores to them. On the 5th of April 1992, Vice President Ruskoy of Russia, in a speech delivered to 5,000 people in Tiraspol, encouraged the Transnistrian people to obtain their independence. The first area of military action was on the eastern shore of the Nistru River, from north to south, the villages of Molovota Nouă, Cocieri, approximately 6,000 inhabitants, Corjova, and the city of Dubăsari, approximately 3,000 inhabitants, together forming a contiguous mainly inhabited area 10-12 kilometers along the shore. The only connection to the western bank from the three villages is either a ferry or two bridges in Dubăsari. In the following weeks, both Transnistria and Moldovan forces amassed large numbers in the area and fought a trench war with intermittent ceasefires. A ceasefire was in negotiation during June in the Tighina area. However, the full-scale conflict re-erupted after regular Moldovan forces entered the city of Tighina in an attempt to re-establish the authority of Moldova there. After diligently planning a coordinated attack, over 1,200 Transnistrian separatists and Cossacks attacked the police station in the city. Alazan rockets aimed at the police station missed their intended target and exploded near a kindergarten. It has been reported that this action was a response to the standoff at the police station in Tighina on the 19th of June 1992. On the afternoon of that day, the Moldovan police in Tighina arrested the 14th Army Major Yermakov on suspicion of planned subversion. Reinforcements arrived later that night from Varnitsa village in aid of the siege policemen. One bystander's account on the early days of fighting. On the 19th of June 1992, in the center of Tighina, the shooting started. The following day, rockets were launched. Many have died. Women and children took shelter in basements. They didn't have food nor water. No one dared to venture outside. When a woman holding her infant dared to go outside, the separatists shot her, leaving only the child alive. The Cossacks killed innocent people. On the 20th of June, a helicopter sprayed a hail of bullets over the village of Varnitsa. In the morning of the 20th of June, most of the city was under Moldovan control. The news of the havoc in Tighina reached Tiraspol, only 11 kilometers away, as Moldovan troops were approaching the crucial bridge over the Nistru. At this point, with the support of ROG's tanks, the Transnistrian guards and Cossack volunteers rushed to confront the Moldovan forces. Russia Vice President Ruskoy, in a speech delivered on the main channel of the Russian television, called for all Russian forces in Tiraspol to storm Tighina. In the course of the following days, parts of the city of Tighina, including the center, were retaken by Transnistrian forces. Urban warfare ensued between the two sides in the densely populated city, causing civilian casualties. The Moldovan radio said 3 Soviet-Russian T-64 tanks from the 14th Army, some bearing Russian flags, were destroyed when closing in on central Tighina, 2 of them by T-12 anti-tank guns, and a third by a rocket-propelled grenade that set its engine on fire. A 4th tank was disabled when its tracks were struck by a rocket-propelled grenade. Russian army spokesman said that the tanks had been seized from depots by separatists. Russian sources reported dozens of dead in the streets. At the same time, Dubasari, Kochier, Dorotskaya and Koshnica are attacked. The bridge over the Nistru is occupied by Transnistrian forces after the tank assault of the 14th Army, and the city is invaded by Russian army and Transnistrian forces. Boris Yeltsin accuses Moldova of aggression, threatening that no choice will be left than that of a Russian army reprisal. 14th Army Military Council addresses an ultimatum to Moldovan President Mircea Snegur, demanding a withdrawal of Moldovan forces, otherwise Russian troops will launch a new offensive. Although the Russian army officially took the position of neutrality and non-involvement, many of its officers were sympathetic towards the fledgling Transnistrian Moldovan Republic, and some even defected in order to help Transnistria's side openly. ROG Parkani, Sapper Battalion, under the orders of General Butkevich, went over to Transnistria's side. This battalion later destroyed the bridges at Dubasari, Gura Băcului, Bucioc, and Koșnița. Moldovan forces used aircraft in the village of Parkani and shelled the ROG station there, which meant engaging not just Transnistria, but also Russian forces. After suffering losses of more than 200 with 300 wounded, on the morning of 22nd of June, Moldovan forces retreat. On the 23rd of June, in the wake of a coordinated offensive by Moldovan forces, Major General Alexander Lebed arrived at the 14th Army headquarters with standing orders to inspect the army, prevent the theft of armaments from its depots, stop the ongoing conflict with any means available, and ensure the unimpeded evacuation of armaments and army personnel from Moldovan and through Ukrainian territory. After briefly assessing the situation, he assumed command of the army, relieving Netkachev, and ordered his troops to enter the conflict directly. On 3rd July at 3 a.m., a massive artillery strike from the 14th Army formation stationed on left bank of the Nistru obliterated the Moldovan forces concentrated in Gerbotsky Forest near Tighina, effectively ending the military phase of the conflict. Romanian authors Anatolie Muntean and Nicolae Ciobotaru attribute to Lebed a quote demonstrating his support of the Transnistrian cause. "I am proud that we helped and armed Transnistrian guards against Moldovan fascists." He also called himself as guarantor of the Nistru Republic. However, he bore no goodwill towards the Transnistrian leadership and frequently denounced them as criminals and bandits. Another quote attributed to him describes his stance as follows: "I told the hooligans, separatists in Tiraspol, and the fascists in Chisinau, either you stop killing each other or else I'll shoot the whole lot of you with my tanks." Shortly before the escalation of the conflict in late June 1992, Romania provided military support to Moldova by supplying weaponry, ammunition and armed vehicles, and also by sending military advisors and training Moldovan military and police forces. Volunteers from Romania fought on Moldova's side. General Lebed strongly suggested Romania to stop interfering in Moldova's affairs, threatening that his tanks can reach Bucharest in a matter of hours. The Ilascu Group Trial. One trial widely covered in the international press and later at European courts of human rights was that of the Ilascu Group. Ilascu was president of the Popular Front of Moldova, Tiraspol branch, which favored the union with Romania from 1989 to 1992, when the organization was outlawed by Transnistrian separatist forces. The Popular Front began its activity in the spring of 1989, reaching over 5,000 active members, and after 1990, with the formation of the Transnistrian Republic, a relentless fight against the organization began. One by one, many of the active members of the front would disappear. In 1992, Ilascu participated in the armed battles on the Nistru as commander of special military troops of the Ministry of National Security of the Republic of Moldova. Ilascu and his unit fought behind enemy lines and inflicted losses on the 14th Army of the Russian Federation and the Cossacks that came to fight in Transnistria along the Moldovans. On the 2nd of June 1992, Ilascu and 3 more ethnic Moldovans, Andrei Ivanțoc, Alexandru Leșco, and Tudor Petrov Popa, were arrested at their homes in Tiraspol by people wearing uniforms with the insignia of the 14th Army of the former USSR, being accused by the Transnistrian authorities of war crimes and acts of terrorism, charged with the murder of 2 separatist officials. On the 9th of December 1993, the Supreme Court of Transnistria found him guilty of a number of offenses defined in the Criminal Code of the Moldovan Soviet Socialist Republic, including incitement to commit an offense against national security, murdering a representative of the state with the aim of spreading terror, and illegal or unauthorized use of ammunition or explosives. Ilascu was sentenced to be shot, and the other 3 defendants were sentenced to hard labor for terms between 12 and 15 years. They had no right of appeal. During the trial, the defendants were kept in reinforced iron cages as they were considered extremely dangerous. This decision was contested by various international human rights organizations, which doubted the fairness of the trial and alleged that they were prosecuted only because they were members of the Tiraspol branch of the Popular Front. For years, Ilascu was kept in solitary confinement without access to family and medical assistance. It wasn't until 2001 that Ilascu was eventually released, 2 years after he filed an application with the European Court of Human Rights, where he sued both Russia and Moldova. A ceasefire agreement was signed on the 21st of July. This official document, whose broad lines was established by the Russian side, was signed by the presidents of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, and Moldova, Mircea Snegur. The agreement provided for peacekeeping forces charged with ensuring observation of the ceasefire and security arrangements, composed of 5 Russian battalions, 3 Moldovan battalions, and 2 Transnistrian battalions under the orders of a joint military command structure. It is estimated that in total, nearly 1,000 people were killed in the conflict, with the number of wounded approaching 3,000. The attack caused a mass exodus of the civilian population from the conflict zone, an estimate of around 100,000 people. Russia has since disbanded the 14th Army and reduced troop strength in Transnistria to a core of around 1,300 men who form part of the JCC. With Transnistria's overwhelming military superiority, Moldova had little chance of achieving victory, and the fighting was unpopular with the skeptical Moldovan population.